Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. In the description of this video, you can find my compiled link. Through there, you can find ways to support the channel, my other social media, and more. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching. How's it going, everybody? CJ here, back with another video. We're doing a first thoughts today. This first thought is on Ivy Gleeful Spellthief. Really cool Simic commander here. 2 mana, 2/1 flyer. Whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, you may copy that spell. That copy targets Ivy. Super cool. So there's some interesting interactions here because this works with auras, it works with mutate, and if the spell being copied is a permanent, then you get a token copy of it, which is pretty cool. So the categories I'll be talking about today are mutate, because mutate seems sweet with this deck. Auras, because an enchantress style build could be really cool. Some good spells you can throw into your deck to target creatures, so that way you copy it and then boom, you get extra benefits. Some token synergy cards if you go the aura or mutate route. And then a ton of one-off cards and in the 99. I'm also going to be editing this video a little differently, and I want to know in the comments section if you guys prefer this way or the original way. And by that I mean I'm going to make the cards bigger so that way you can read them more easily, but you're not going to see my face as much. So let me know what you guys think about that and which way you'd prefer. And we're going to hop right into this video. The first category we're going to talk about today is mutate. If you mutate a creature onto a creature you control, you get to copy it for Ivy. So you get a token copy of that creature mutating onto Ivy, which is a pretty interesting interaction. So some good cards that you could throw into this deck to mutate with are Sea Dasher Octopus, which is really nice because Ivy has flying. You have Archipelagor, Auspicious Sterix, which gives you some free spells every time you mutate. Dreamtail Heron for card draw. Gem Razor, great artifact and enchantment removal. Glowstone Recluse can make Ivy pretty big. Parcel Beast is just an interesting card. Migratory Greathorn for good ramp. You have Pouncing Shore Shark for bounce. Sawtusk Devastator for removal. Basically anything that's not a creature you can beast within. Souvenir Snatcher can steal artifacts, which is really cool. And Trumpeting Gnar, it just creates tokens for you, which is really nice. And if you're going to go with mutate cards, you should run cards like Essence Symbiote, Mysterious Egg, and Poliwag Symbiote because they work really well with mutate. But there's not a lot of creatures in these colors with mutate, so I don't think there's going to be a great mutate commander, but there's some great mutate synergies that make it so a lot of these cards are worth running. The next category I'm going to talk about is auras. Auras seem great for this deck. This is probably the way I would build the deck, because if you cast an aura targeting a different creature you control, you get to copy it and do it on Ivy. And there's a bunch of auras that have ETBs or buffs and stuff like that, which can be really powerful. Some of those auras include Alpha Authority to provide hexproof. Shielding Plaques is very similar to that. There's Bear Umbra, so that way you can untap your lands multiple times, which is really nice. And also Totem Armor is very protective. Cartouche of Knowledge and Cartouche of Strength are both pretty solid cards. They both act as card draw, and Cartouche of Strength provides removal. And if you have 2 copies of Cartouche of Strength, that's double removal, which is pretty powerful. Cards like Combat Research, Keen Sense, Curiosity, Curious Obsession, and Sixth Sense seem amazing in this deck. Ivy's got flying. You can load Ivy up with enchantments that make it so whenever it deals combat damage, you draw cards, and just draw tons of cards. Just throw in other creatures that have evasion or flying and reap the benefits, because you can, every time you cast a Keen Sense, you're casting 2 of them. That's fantastic. There's also a handful of auras that provide ramp. Elemental Resonance, Mark of Sakiko, and One with Nature all seem great for this. Pattern of Rebirth can provide you with some really good tutoring. Treachery seems fantastic. You can play Treachery on an opponent's creature to steal it and copy it for Ivy, and then you get to untap your lands twice, creating a lot of extra mana. You also have Wolfbriar Blessing as another removal card. And if you want to go more of a Voltron route, you have cards similar to Ancestral Mask and Auramancer's Guise. There's also Corrupted Conscience, which is a really cool card because you get to steal an opponent's creature and give Ivy Infect, so Ivy becomes much scarier. Eldrazi Conscription is extremely powerful. Same thing with Octopus Umbra, very cool card there. You have the Impetus cards and the Vows, which seem pretty cool for this deck because you can enchant your opponent's creatures to make it so they can't attack you, and then copy the enchantment and put it on Ivy to grow Ivy as well. So they both pump your commander and make it so you're protected from your opponent's scary cards. If you're going to run all of these auras, you might as well also run enchantment synergies. Some of those include enchantresses like Argothian Enchantress, Eidolon of Blossoms, Enchantress's Presence, Setessan Champion, and Verduran Enchantress. All of these let you draw cards when you play auras, which is really powerful for this deck. Sanctum Weaver can provide tons of ramp. Destiny Spinner can make it so both your auras and your creatures can't be countered. Herald of the Pantheon is cool. It reduces the cost of your enchantments. Eutropia, the twice favored, is a very cool card. It gives +1/+1 counters on your creatures and flying whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control. So every time you cast an aura, you're getting 2 +1/+1 counters, and you give 2 creatures flying, which is pretty interesting. Nylea's Colossus is a fantastic finisher for this deck. When it enters the battlefield or another enchantment enters the battlefield, double target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. So if you have Nylea's Colossus in play and you cast an aura, you get to create a token copy of it. 2 auras enter, so you can double Ivy's power and toughness twice. That's very powerful. It can very easily lead to commander damage wins. The Yavimaya Enchantress is a fantastic creature to throw into this deck. You can cast your auras targeting it and then copy it for Ivy, and Yavimaya Enchantress just gets bigger as you have more enchantments enter the battlefield. Enigmatic Incarnation seems like a really cool card for this deck, as you're going to have a lot of auras, a lot of enchantments in play. You can sacrifice them to tutor out better ones that you need that fit your needs more. Estrid's Invocation and Mirror Maid are also both very cool enchantments to throw into this deck because they can just copy whatever enchantment you already have in play. Next up, we're going to talk about some instants and sorceries that you can throw into this deck to target creatures that either you control or opponents control, and then copy them for Ivy to reap a lot of extra benefits. Some of those spells include Cerulean Wisps, Charge Through, Shadow Rift, Slip Through Space, Viridescent Wisps, and Leap, as all of those will also draw you a card, so every time you cast one of those for 1 mana, you get to draw 2 cards. Great! Cryptic Command actually seems pretty interesting for this deck because you can use it to return Ivy and another creature you control to your hands and draw 2 cards in case somebody wipes the board, so you get to save 2 creatures and you get to draw 2 cards. Cytoshape could lead to some very interesting lines. You can use it to turn 2 of your creatures, one of them being Ivy, into a creature of your choice that's on the battlefield. So say somebody has a Nyxbloom Ancient out. Now you can have 2 Nyxbloom Ancients and have all the mana you could possibly want. It's much more niche, but it could lead to some very explosive plays. Enter the Unknown, target creature explores, and then you get to play an extra land this turn. That's fantastic. 2 creatures explore, you get 2 extra lands for 1 mana. Hunter's Prowess, along with Hunter's Insight, can provide you some very explosive card draw. One of my favorite cards for this deck is Irenicus Vowel Duplication, as it makes a token of target creature that's non-legendary. So you can copy a creature you control and copy Ivy. Both of those copies will enter. Boom, you have 2 Ivies now, so that way every time you cast a spell that targets 1 creature, you get to copy it twice and just get a lot of extra benefits off of it. That's a no-brainer include for this deck. And if you do go the Voltron route, Soul's Majesty could provide you some very explosive card draw as well. If you do go the Spellslinger route, then you're going to want to run cards that can capitalize on that, including Archmage Emeritus, Dika, Docent of Perfection, Dragon's Guard Elite, Gale, Jingataxis, extra copies. Orvar seems phenomenal in this style of deck. If you're casting spells like target creatures you control, you can make copies of those creatures with Orvar. No-brainer include. Octavia, Poppet Stitcher, Precursor Golem, so that way you can have extra copies of spells by copying it for each of your golems. Primal Amulet for cost reduction, Talrand token creation, and Wizards of Thay, even more cost reduction, and you can cast your sorceries at instant speed, which is pretty nice. Another Spellslinger style route that you can go is pump spells. So you just try to pump Ivy and another creature as much as possible and swing in for big damage. That could be a pretty interesting build. Now we're on to the token synergies. There's a lot of cards that work really well with token synergies, especially if you go the Aura or Mutate route. These are going to be extremely powerful in your deck. Those cards include token doublers like Adrix and Nev, Doubling Season, Parallel Lives, and Primal Vigor. Idol of Oblivion can also be a fantastic card draw spell. Jaheira might be the best ramp card for this type of deck, because you can tap all your auras and all your mutate tokens to add mana to your mana pool. That's fantastic. Second Harvest can double all of your tokens, which can be extremely powerful, especially at instant speed. And Essica's Chariot can allow you to copy more of your tokens as well, which is really cool. And now it's time for the one-off cards. Artisan of Forms, Gnarlback Rhino, Sage of Hours, and Triton Fortune Hunter seem great for this deck because they have really powerful abilities when you target them. So they're great creatures to target with your auras or target with your instants that you're then going to copy and target Ivy with. Livewire Lash and Season of Growth also adds to this type of strategy. Spellwild Oof is unbelievable in this deck, especially if you're going the aura route, because you can cast all your auras targeting Spellwild Oof, making them cost less mana, and then copy them for Ivy, so Ivy just gets all these auras at a discount. Willbreaker could put in tons of work in this deck by, instead of targeting your own stuff, you just start targeting your opponent's stuff to steal them. Similarly, you can use Dismiss into Dream to bounce your opponent's creatures. If you do go the aura route, Fugitive Druid, Druid of Horns, and Melodus Astronomer can provide you with some great benefits as creatures to target. With all the targeting going on, Gargos could be an amazing removal card in this deck. An automatic include in this deck would be Vesuvian Duplimancy, brand new card from Dominaria United. This seems extremely powerful. Whenever you cast a spell that targets only a single artifact or creature you control, create a token that's a copy of that artifact or creature, except it's not legendary. You can use this card to make token copies of Ivy that aren't legendary, which is extremely powerful in this deck. You could also use it to make token copies of any other creatures you control that you may want. Either way, you're going to be targeting creatures non-stop with this deck, so this card is a no-brainer to include and will provide you with tons of benefits. This deck would love to have multiple Ivies in play. Helm of the Host, Spark Double, and both Sakashimas can help do that. You're going to be copying a lot of spells here and not actually casting those copies. So cards like Twinning Staff and Errant can provide you even more copies, which seems fantastic. Echoing Equation can kick off a explosive turn. You turn everything into Ivy, and then every time you cast anything that targets a creature, you get to copy it for the number of creatures you control. That can provide you some insane plays, explosive turns, and easily could win you the game in certain situations. Tamiyo's Safekeeping is a fantastic protection spell to throw into this deck. You have certain enchantments that return back to your hand, including Shimmering Wings, Whip Silk, and Viscerid Armor. This means you can cast them on a creature, copy them for Ivy, and then return the original to your hand so you can recast it, triggering all your enchantresses, triggering all of your constellation, stuff like that, and making Ivy bigger and bigger and bigger because the token copies stick around and just grow Ivy. Similarly, you can use cards like Triton Cavalry. This card seems really interesting for the deck. Whenever you cast a spell that targets it, you may return target enchantment to its owner's hand. So if you have Triton Cavalry in play, say it's enchanted, you can cast an enchantment targeting Triton Cavalry, return an enchantment to your hand, and copy the enchantment that you just cast for Ivy. And then you can cast the enchantment that you just picked back up, targeting Triton Cavalry, return the original enchantment that you just cast onto Triton Cavalry back to your hand, create a copy for the new one that you just played, targeting Ivy, and just do that over and over and over again. It's a pretty interesting little loop. It obviously requires mana, but it just provides you with a lot of card advantage. It can grow Ivy, makes a lot of token copies, and could just net you tons and tons of benefits, and you can just win the game off of the card advantage that it provides. The last thing I want to talk about is in the 99. Some of the commanders that I think Ivy would slot into their decks pretty well are Otrimi, Aluna, Brokos, and Ramos. These are all heavily used as Mutate commanders, and Mutate works really well with Ivy. Also, Aura-based decks work really well with Ivy, so Gallia, Tuvasa, Estrid, and Kestia could all be fantastic homes for Ivy as well. And that is everything I have for Ivy Gleeful Spellthief. If somebody in your playgroup happens to have a feather deck, make sure to play this deck against that feather deck because you're just going to have the best time of your life. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Peace out, everybody.